My name is Justin, and I am a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RECO12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living the relative, happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery and have been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 109th meeting of RECO12. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships and identify with addictions with such variety as alcoholism, drugs, food, sex, gambling, theft, codependency, and all of the anon groups, just to name a few. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom webinar each Friday at noon Central Time. And they share for about 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of that speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. If you're hearing this meeting in recorded podcast form and would like to join us and participate as a live audience member in the future, please go to RECO12.com. That's RECO12.com to learn more and to submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations. RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our Step 12 in this manner. We gratefully accept contributions, and I'll put the link in the chat and in the show notes of the podcast if you would like to contribute. We got a few more 5-star reviews recently, and I want to read one of those. So Super0117 said, I recommend the RECO12 podcast to anyone who has suffered or is suffering from an addiction of any kind. By listening, you will hear about real life experiences of those who have found recovery from their addictions by applying the 12 steps in their lives. The stories are remarkable and inspiring. They help me see that miracles happen and that real people are healing from their addictions and really living. This podcast helps me in my own recovery. Thank you so much, Super0117. Appreciate that. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers from their higher power. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, Lydz G. Lydz's topic is We Do Recover and Laugh Again After Violence. Now here's a little about Lydz. Lydz G, aka Lydia, is a multimedia experimental artist and activist who came into the rooms of 12-Step to heal from domestic violence. As a self-described Native Glitter Tomboy Lesbian, trademarked, Lydz thought they were too niche or too broken to heal, and genuinely Google searched, quote, "Is it possible to have friends and laugh again after violence?" before beginning the step work of 12-Step recovery. Today, they are privileged to share the tools they used to regain their sense of humanity, connect deeper in the communities they're part of, and repair relationships that suffered, and gain a host of new lifelong friends. They are in the process of learning how to show up and use the 12 steps to make the world safer for fellow queer folks, BIPOC, and trauma survivors, including reading works about addiction recovery by some of their favorite revolutionary authors. They also have good news for people with similar search histories. Recovery, connection, and being restored to laughing is possible. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and have been given the power to help others. You're not alone. We recover together, and we're building a future that needs you. Lydz, the floor is yours. Take it away. Excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much for that intro, Justin. And I know that there is like a creative spirit behind everything because I don't even remember writing that. And so, yes, thank you for your service. I'm just going to get right into it. So glad to be back. Honestly, like the last time I was here, I talked really broadly about addiction. And I didn't realize that I was doing this, but I was kind of hiding behind more of like the party cat activities and activities that I've already heard about in the rooms. So today I'm grateful to be back again and to share what brought me into the rooms and where I work my program the hardest and where I have the most like meaningful outreach calls. So what got me into the rooms was experiencing intimate partner violence coupled with institutional violence. And I tried everything to leave except for jail, and I was willing to go to jail, but that just wasn't what happened. I lost everything except my dog, and like, thank God I didn't lose my dog. It's important for me to be armed with the facts. So we know what we're dealing with. And one of the facts about DV is that it is under-resourced. And I'm going to make a comparison to substance use disorders and recovery. So this is why 12-step solution is really important to me. First of all, it's free. And it works for processing violence and processing trauma. The AA Big Book came out in the 1930s, and the PTSD diagnosis didn't exist until 1980. So we were working with that without even having the language we have now. Native American communities have been dealing with alcoholism and violence and trauma since the 1700s and 1800s. In my family, it was like more recent because we're West Coast natives. My family like fled Mexico and got like Spanish names instead of native names in the early 1900s, maybe very late 1800s. And many of the AA principles do reflect, I thought it was a Christian program, but a lot of it does reflect the stuff that I was brought up with Native values. And the biggest one for me is that like the opposite of addiction, it's not abstinence, it's not sobriety, it's connection. So for me, when I came into program, I'd lost my sense of connection. And that's what made it such a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body for me. So there's a study that happened out in Baltimore. And excuse me, it basically said that working a 12-step program, including like the last step of sponsorship, which just means like helping another person to use the steps, it gave heroin and cocaine addicts a 75% chance of complete remission of substance addictions. And the other 25%, when they worked the program, showed improvement. So when I came in, I did have to lay aside some prejudices because I had this like weird pride of like not having gotten into certain drugs or like whatever. And so this is like silly, but this is the best source I have. I was watching Euphoria, like the show on HBO, and they were talking about how like only 5% of addicts recover from substance addiction. And I didn't know that daunting statistic was out there because like, and it makes me want to cry to think about it because I've seriously been submerged since 2020 in a culture of people who has found a solution that completely goes against that statistic. So there's an expression in AA and also in like Al-Anon, which is for friends and family of alcoholics and addicts, which is that like when you're looking for a sponsor, you want to ask somebody who you want what they have. So even before being in the rooms as a social worker, I've heard that kind of value in the context of like, take leadership from the most impacted, which is from Beautiful Trouble, Toolbox for the Revolution, if you're into that. But it's like the same principle. And in AA, they talked about how an alcoholic could help another alcoholic in a way that a non-alcoholic couldn't. And for me, like, I didn't know how to help alcoholics. Like now I have more tools, but when I first started, I didn't know how. And in the same way, people who hadn't survived DV didn't know how to help me. So we use the term beyond human aid. So bringing it back to the topic at hand, my sponsor was somebody who was like not afraid of my story. And I had other fellows come in who were just kind of like, wait, hold on, let's try the steps and see if they help. And I remember there was like one time I was locked out of my house. I was playing these weird and dangerous games. And I'm just going to touch on this briefly before getting into the solution. So if you need to know you're not alone, here's a little story. So I was like in the middle of all of these crazy games. It was not safe. And my sponsor was like, hey, I totally understand. And I do believe that you can recover. Like, I think the steps might help you. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm sorry you understand. Like, I'm sorry that you understand because no one should understand. This should be like a weird thing only I'm experiencing. And her response was like, I know it's hard when you're in it, but now it's just information. And I can use that information to help other people. So I won't put all her business out there, but she's also been on the pod. So if you look up Naika S, you can hear her story. And I'm really proud to know her. And yeah, so, okay. This whole like way of walking on eggshells to try and get like affection or try to change someone's behavior or whatever, that was my normal. And there's a phrase in AA that's the addict life seems the only normal one, right? So all that is the backstory. That's like the step one of it all. That's what I came in as. That's what I had to accept. And I'm going to read the quote from the text that originates the 12 steps, which is the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. This is on page 132. It says, we have been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We've been dealing with addiction. And in my fellowship, we replace the words to make sense to us. So for me, it's like, okay, we've been dealing with violence, we've been dealing with trauma, we've been dealing with whatever in its worst aspects, but we're not a glum lot. It's from the 30s, so we're not a glum lot, right? We're fun. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. So for me, that was wild because like I mentioned, I did social work. I was a community activist. I still do stuff, but now I have a totally different approach where I'm not a martyr. But when I first heard that, I was like, what are they talking about? So that's something that has been like a best practice in healing, is to not take everything on, but instead, when we see someone sinking into the mire that is addiction, we give them first aid and place what we have at their disposal. So what we have is the steps, like this framework, right? So for their sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past, which like even just prepping to come here today, I was like, wait, what happened? Like I was having moments where I kind of forgot how bad it was. But like my life has grown bigger than the grief that I came in with. And that is a miracle. And I'm really grateful for it. But yeah, so those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find that we're soon overcome by them, right? So we're not taking on each other's trauma. We're like, okay, here's the framework. Let's do this together, right? We think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. And then we've already talked about this, but let's say it again. Why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and been given the power to help others. Okay, so that's kind of like where we're at today. I'm going to jump right into it. And I use a workbook that, Justin, I'll have you put in the show notes if you don't mind, so our friends at home can follow along. It's kind of like a tourniquet method. It helps you get through the steps really quickly, and then you practice them for the rest of your life, but you can learn it really fast. And there's also a link in there where you can find people every single day who are working this program through this book. So basically what we just went over is like my step one experience, and to see if that's your experience, on page 5, there's a log and loser list. So the logs are the things that we tried to use to stay sober. So for me, it was like, so for me, so I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, but one day I realized that it made me smell bad. So I just stopped. So I'm not like a true cigarette addict. I'm just someone who smoked a lot. But for this relationship, nothing stopped me. I needed to have a whole new experience with these steps. So for me, like I crossed out everything on the log list except jail. And I had lied to cops over this. So it's not like I hadn't done anything illegal, right? And then the loser list, it sounds a little tongue in cheek. It's a little bit less trauma informed than like some of the language that some people want to use, which is fine. But for me, it's like, this is the stuff that I lost in my process addiction, in my going back to this person, in the relationship, in the underlying beliefs that I had, whatever you want to call that. These are all the things that I lost, time, family, money, relationships, home, security, all these things. I also added like sleep. I lost a lot of sleep, and also desire to live, because I was not well. Like I was not good. So for me, I put that there. And then if I find myself like losing things on this list, then I go, ooh, I need to like get really serious about this program again. So that's the step one. And it's a little daunting, but there's good news. So there's something that we call the essentials of recovery. These are the only 3 things you need to do this program. Like it's principles that you need. You don't need like, you can get by without like paper, like you don't need anything outside of you. You can get well regardless of anybody, but there's 3 principles. So some people call it the how: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. There's questions on page 7 in the workbook. It says, are you willing to answer questions honestly with a simple yes or no? So we learn through our step work to move away from black and white thinking, but when we're in that space, that's a yes or no question. Like, are you going to be honest? Yes or no? And then open-mindedness, will you lay aside any prejudices, experience the program, and assess the results for yourself? Sometimes it's like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, all right, then that's where your issue is. That's okay. We got you. Like we got the information. Once you can say yes, then cool, you've got 2 out of 3. The next one is willingness. Are you willing to show up and do the work? Sometimes people got to pout for a minute. That's fine. When you're ready, when you can say yes to all 3, then we get into the next step. And I know that if this is your first time hearing this, it's probably really dense. I'm just going to go through it. You can play this back whenever. This is how I work the steps in regards to violence. So step 2, coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. One thing that I very, very much benefited from is someone told me in the rooms, like, if your God isn't working, hire a new one. It doesn't have to be anyone else's God. It's your own idea. So some days, like to me today, I don't really want to use the word God because I want to make sure that this is a resource that I would have listened to when I was first coming in, and God was not it for me. Now I'm kind of like, oh, it's kind of, no. We weren't going to go there. So today I'm like, okay, what helped me was to think like, do I believe in a future where people who are going through really intense things have access to this free program? Do I believe in that world? Once I can say that that's possible, once I can say I have faith that that can happen, then I move on to step 3. So I'm going through it pretty quickly. So, some programs take years. I couldn't do that. I need to do all 12 steps every day, and it helps me. So yeah, step 3, which we're already on, good job, is making the decision to turn our will and our lives. So that's our thinking and our actions over to the care of God as we understand God, however we've defined that higher power in our step 2, or if we're just like, to whom it may concern, that works, right? We can do it however. So our will is our thinking and our lives are actions. So if I'm sitting here being like, yeah, I believe in that shit, but I'm going to still go over here and hide, which like sounds good sometimes, but like isn't in line with that vision I just declared. So am I willing to turn, like before I did program, my thinking and my actions were based on the idea that I was worth nothing. It was based on the idea that I'm disposable. It was based on the idea that my value came from this other person doing X, Y, and Z. It was just dependent on everything else. So like the things that my brain was doing is like, oh, you're a piece of shit. Maybe if you learn how to close the door more quietly, then you will be a good person. Just like things that's my thinking, and that did not work for me. So once I was able to be like, okay, I'm going to read the step 3 promises. It's going to blow your mind if it's the first time you've ever heard it, but like, I promise you it's possible. So when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, it provided what we needed if we kept close to it and performed its work well. So that's like our values, right? So if we're performing the work of like building this future or whatever, established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in our own little plans and designs. The dedication I had to closing doors was not maximum usefulness for my energy. So that was not useful. So more and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. We felt a new power flow in. We enjoyed peace of mind, and we discovered we could face life successfully. We became conscious of its presence, the divine presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. Holy shit, that's amazing. It works. Like, it really works. And like, you don't have to get to that alone. And also, I'm about to talk about step 4, which I did I put the most messed up stuff in my life in step 4 because I thought I would break it and then I would be free and I wouldn't have to do this stupid program. So you can do that. Like, you can totally do that. Just do it. Your motivation is kind of like, it can shift. Like, you'll have a new experience. But I'm going to tell you about like the 3 major inventories that came up in my step 4 around violence and what I was experiencing. And then I'm going to tell you how it like transformed. So at first, I tried to do my resentment around this person that I was with because I wanted to blame them. But when I was like digging at it, everything that I had to say, so like there's 5 columns on page 14. Column 1 is like, what are you mad about or afraid of or whatever? So for me, I actually was mad at myself because in my mind, I should have left already. So column 2 is where we put like, what is our thoughts? What is coming? What is the evidence? Why am I angry? Why am I resentful? Whatever. And so for me, I was like, I should have already left. I should have been able to fix them. I should have, right? So like that was that. And that expectation, that anger at myself, when we go into column 3, it affected my self-esteem. It affected my security because I was basing my security on if someone else was doing X, Y, and Z. It affected my ambitions, my money, my relationships, friendships, romantic, otherwise, business even. We'll talk about column 4 and 5 in a second. So then the other two that were really big on mine, where I was mad at the concept of God, which you can put on your 4th step. I think that everyone should. I think it's amazing. I don't want a God that can't handle my questions. So I'd be bringing the questions. And the column 2 of it all, violence, da, da, da. And then the column 3, what does it affect? Oh, wait, it affects, X, Y, and Z. And then the last one, I was really upset with the lack of institutional structure for people who are in violence. I was so mad about that. And that makes sense. And the column 2, it's not just my beliefs about it. We can actually put facts. So, I experienced X, Y, Z. I put like the nature of what I experienced, and there should have been X, Y, and Z. It is true that there should be more support, but it's also a fact that there's not.
Stress and trauma happen inside of the body, which means we can heal them through the body. My name is Luis Mojica. I'm a somatic therapist, nutritionist, and host of the Holistic Life Navigation podcast. Join me each week as I teach you how to release stress and trauma through listening to your body, using nutrition, somatic experiencing, and other holistic practices. You can listen at the Holistic Life Navigation podcast or at holisticlifenavigation.com.
And that was really important for me to be able to sort. I also was like, oh, there's some fears coming up, which moving into the fear inventory, my biggest fears were like, maybe this better world is not possible. Maybe we're stuck here. And that does not work for me. I cannot make that fear my higher power. And my other fear was like, this was my first out lesbian relationship. It was like, I wasn't sneaking around with no one's girlfriend. It wasn't the old things that I had to do. And I was afraid that I would never be able to be out again, which is like really intense. Like it was afraid of living life as a lie. So again, taking it to the column 3, what does it affect? So that's kind of like my overview of my inventory. And then my biggest harm was like lying and like the self-harm that I would do because I thought I was worthless, right? So that's kind of like, this is the step where people are like, shit. But that's why we quickly get into the next part. So the next part is admitted to God, whatever that means to you, ourselves, and another human being. A lot of people choose like their big book sponsor. The exact nature, which is the why, not what, of our wrongs. So there are properly appointed authorities. There are certain things that happen that are very specific that I'm still like, what? Hold on. I take those to a therapist because they are qualified to be like, oh yeah, let's pull that apart. There's certain financial things that I'm like, oh, wait, what? That's wild. That came up in my step 4. I take that to a financial advisor. There's, there's specific people you talk to about specific things. And my sponsor is a person that anybody in fellowship, because once you get through the steps, we kind of take turns sponsoring each other forever. And so I'll go to someone and I'll be like, oh, here is my spiritual problem right now. I just saw this information about how much work I have to do, and I am feeling X, Y, and Z about it. And then they help me to get into the solution by asking me what's the value that I'm trying to bring out, right? So then now we're going to go to page 18, and I know we're breezing through this. I just want you to have all the spoilers of what happens so that you're not afraid of the program. I know it's a lot. Thank you for bearing with me. The step 5 promises, again, sounds wild. It definitely happened for me. So once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. Whoa. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our creator. So for me, like in my bio, I said I'm an artist. For me, it meant I could actually start making things again because I wasn't afraid of someone finding out some shit about me, And we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the problem has disappeared often comes on strongly after step 5. We're like, oh my God, I'm better, right? We feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. That's a big ass promise. And it like totally comes true. So on page 18, there's also this chart. We keep it multiple choice because that's what's been the most helpful. So if you see this and you're like, no, I have more to say, go back to those essentials, see if you're like willing to try the program and assess the result for yourself, open-minded, all that jazz. When you're ready, look at the column 4 and 5. So for me, I'll tell you my biggest things were like, I was arrogant because I thought that I could cure somebody. Like I really did. And I also, when I hear other people who left DV giving me their step 4, I get really emotional at how proud of them I am. Because like I had someone say to me, I would rather drink broken glass and leave violence again. That shit was so hard. And that's a fact. And like and I'm going to get choked up. We are the lucky ones, you know, like in addiction and in violence, like those of us who get out are the lucky ones, and it doesn't happen for everybody. I would never tell someone they didn't do enough. But for me, my goofy ass thinks I can get an A+ in an impossible situation. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Let's like just acknowledge that that's the silly shit that I was on. That's a little bit like arrogant and also self-loathing because I'm making my value based on performing X, Y, and Z. So then on page 18, it says the opposite of that is humility. So I need to admit, I'm just like everybody else who's been in my situation. And that's actually a beautiful thing. I have my little zest, my own little flavor of it, whatever. The other ones that come up for me are jealousy, distrust, and suspicion. And I don't need to trust this person that I was in this relationship with. I need to trust my intuition and my program. That's what it means to trust. And then also dishonesty, stealing, and lying. When I am not trusting, I start lying. That's something that I've learned about myself. And the answer to that, the antidote, is honesty and integrity and restitution. So restitution, not just being like, don't do an injury, but like for the injury to heal. That's what like Malcolm X said. So then the last thing is fear of blank. So for me, fear of not being able to live authentically, fear of whatever. The antidote to that is faith and courage. So when you first read that, you're like, whatever that means, how am I supposed to, That takes us into step 6 and 7, and we're just going to do that right now. So step 6 is we become entirely ready to have God removed, to let go of all these character defects, all these outdated coping mechanisms, like let them go. It says on page 19, when I argue for my character defects, congratulations, I get to keep them. We don't have to let them go until we understand that they're futile, fatal, and destructive. Once they are, there's a solution. But if lying is working for you, I don't know, have your fun. It doesn't work for me. So I got to stop. So then going to page 7, step 7 on page 20, humbly asking God to remove our shortcomings. I love this prayer because on this page, we have like a fill in the blank. I know I have 4 minutes, so I'm going to talk real quick about so the prayer. Okay. When ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character. And you can seriously just list them. Look at the cheat sheet. Remove my arrogance, remove my distrust, remove my dishonesty, stealing, and lying. Remove my fear, which stands in the way of my usefulness to you, God, whoever, and my fellows. Grant me strength, and actually, please strengthen my humility, strengthen my trust and my intuition. Oh, I'm all choked up. Strengthen my honesty, integrity, and restitution, and strengthen my faith and courage as I go out from here to do your bidding, divine bidding. Amen. So then step 8, it says in the workbook on page 21, now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. I have in my notes that boredom kills us and like the science behind it, because I'm just a nerd. Once our adrenaline gets to a certain threshold, we kind of like crave that threshold. So people like me often can't be bored. It just doesn't work for our brains anymore, but we can like get that adrenaline without being in danger. Anyway, so step 9 is made direct amends to such people where, except for where to do so would injure them or others. I am included in others. So I'm not going to go up to this person who I had this toxic situation with, a bad dynamic with, that I take responsibility for just as much as I understand that, whatever is going on there. I'm not going to go up to them and be like, hey, sorry, I'm in a program now, because that puts me in a position that's not safe. So we were just talking about, before we started recording, Drop the Rock. It's a resource for steps 6 and 7. And one of the quotes is like, you don't get to choose which defects God takes. For me, every once in a while, I do get angry because it protects me from forgetting everything that happened and going to, even if it's not the same person, but like the same behaviors or the same, I'm kind of like not kind of, let me stop lying. I'm definitely a martyr. I'm definitely somebody who wants to help, but I need a divine inspiration or I get kind of controlling, which sucks. I wish that wasn't true, but like, that's how like I'm made. So it's fine. And it wouldn't be helpful for me to go up to somebody who I have a bad dynamic with and be like, I'm sorry, how can I be helpful? Because they might still be not good. That might be worse for both of us. So for me, like these amends take innumerable forms. And actually my 10 through 12 relates to this. Like the work that I do in the world has a lot to do with when I was mad at God, the outcome from me being like, fine, I'm open to these principles. I've learned more about my Native culture and my closed cultural practices that I was too scared to like be involved in before because I was not well. And now I'm spiritually fit enough to be part of my Native community. And then with the resentment towards broken systems, that's why I'm here today. Like, I really do believe the 12 steps is helpful. So for me, sponsoring and talking about the 12 steps in this framework and in a way that I hope is more accessible, that's part of my amends for my resentment towards a broken system. And then like for myself, it literally is like learning to just build, like accept the life that is meant for me. Like I don't have to be suffering to get money. I don't have to be suffering to get love, like just accepting all of these new things. So to wrap up on the 10, 11, 12 of it all, step 10 is like doing a mini step 4 whenever something comes up. Continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I'm going to read the promises. Justin, I'm going to go over like 2 minutes because these promises are just too good to skip over. So when you do your step 10, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, drugs, obsessive compulsive behavior, trauma responses, whatever. By this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor, drugs, acting out behavior. If tempted, we recoil as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see how our new attitude towards liquor, drugs, obsessive compulsive behavior, whatever, has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as if we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not even sworn it off. If you're like me, swearing it off doesn't work, but instead we've committed to these principles and now the problem's been removed. It doesn't exist. We're neither cocky nor afraid. That's how we react as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition through doing the steps. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood it, praying only for knowledge of its will for us and the power to carry it out. I'm just going to read on page 27, the midday focus. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. And here we ask God, the universe, whoever, for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. When our thoughts are going crazy, we can just be like, all right, universe, you better give me a better thought because mine are not working. And then we get one. It says we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answer comes after we've tried this for a while. The promise is on that. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. We ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show. Our egos, that did not work, right? Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Whatever's happening is happening. Like however you got to say that. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient, so we can actually be more helpful. We don't tire so easily because we're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange lives to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. And then the last one, which is the sponsorship of it all, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carry this message to others who are suffering, and we practice these principles, the column 5, in all of our affairs. And the promise is like, oh my God, I always cry because it's true. Like life will take on new meaning to watch people recover, including from violence. Like I've seen that shit. I've seen all that. Like people do recover, and to see them help others. We get to watch loneliness vanish and to see a fellowship grow up around us and to have a host of friends. It's an experience that you must not miss. We know you won't want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot in our lives. it's been like some of my best friends I met in this program, and also a cute ripple effect. I think my sister might even be here today. Like, it makes me want to cry. Like, people in my community have been like, what are these steps? My best friend was mad and was like, where's that template that you use when you're mad? Like, what do you do with this? And it ripples out, and it really works. And I'm so excited. And I know I went a little over time, and thanks for listening. I know I'm also talking fast. Very much appreciate it. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Justin. Thank you.
Lydz, you rocked that. Thank you so much. And don't fret over going a little bit over. We appreciate that, but we also appreciate the opportunity to ask questions of you here. And there have been several that have come in. One of them, and I posted this in here, the name of the workbook, the name of that program, that's Big Book Sponsorship, 12 Steps, 4 Hours, correct? Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect.
sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So I put the link to that in the chat, 12steps4hours.org. You can get the information there that she shared there. You can get the work, download the workbook. Every fourth Sunday of every month, they do a workshop that there are hundreds of people that come to every month, and powerful stuff. It was started by Cameron F., who has been a guest speaker on this podcast a couple of times, and just firecracker. All right. Very good. So we have a few questions that have come in. I'll get to them in the order they came in. The first one is from Scott. Scott says, Lydz, I myself am also a domestic violence survivor. How did you get out from under your qualifier with such passion and joy? And what is the driving force for you all? You always help and serve others with such jazz and flair. Love it. Does your past abuse come back again and haunt you? And what do you do when it does?
I love a juicy question. Thank you so much. So I didn't do it with enthusiasm. I was a freaking zombie when I came in here. And like, I read a statistic that it takes 7 times to leave someone. And I was like, that's it? How come all these people can leave after 7 times? I had tried to leave so many times that I had like a diamond membership at a shitty hotels chain. Like, I did not understand. So for me, it was like, I count my recovery date on 11/11/2020, which just happened to be like a really cute number. But I was just staring at the ceiling in a hotel, and I was just like, I haven't laughed or cried in months. So like, I have to make a different decision. It was like, it was my intuition. It was like, in the big book, it says deep down inside every man, woman, child, person is the fundamental idea of God. And I was sitting there and I was like, well, I'm not dead yet, which is weird. So what, like, it was just a moment of like complete surrender. And for me, it was like when someone called, people in the rooms call like the gift of desperation is an acronym for God. I had that. I fully had that. I was so desperate when I came in, and like, I really appreciate the love. And if you're new and you kind of feel like you want people to hear you, and maybe sometimes, I know when I was new, I felt like people weren't hearing me. And now I understand it's because like, people know the suffering, like people understand it and they want to see you get better. And like, it's like in the beginning, how we said, we can't take on other people's stuff. But like, the most helpful thing that people said to me is like, hey, I see you, just try the program. Like, just try it. Like, I see you're not good. Just try it. And I thought my sponsor was going to fire me because I kept doing things really weird. And my sponsor just like, okay, I guess you need more steps. Like, do you want to try the next one? Like, what? I mean, I guess we just do the next step. Like, can you do this step well enough to like understand it? And then we'll go to the next one. And so the fact that people really trusted this program, they're like, man, I don't know what to do with you, but the steps are supposed to work. And I was like, okay. Like, now when I see people suffering and I'm like, hey, no, like, I get to pass on what was freely given to me, which is completely the steps. Like, if I'm like, oh yeah, call me whenever you're in it, call me whenever. If I just make myself available for venting, that's not going to help either of us because I'm not qualified for that. So for me, like, I have this enthusiasm because every time I'm like, I don't know about the steps, and then I try it, it like works. And I don't know. I don't know. Like, if you saw me 2 years ago, I was a zombie, which is so funny because now I'm just like, but I was a zombie, like a full zombie. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
A higher consumption of vegetables may cut your odds of developing depression by as much as 62%. An American Cancer Society study found that women who sit for more than 6 hours a day have a 40% higher death rate. Hi, my name is Maya Acosta, and I'm a health and wellness educator and host of the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast. Join me and the amazing people that I get to talk to as I set out to learn how to improve our quality of life and increase our longevity. You can listen at the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast or at healthylifestylesolutions.org.
I love that. So in short, basically work the steps, dang it. And that comes up. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that and answering that for us. A question that's come up a couple times here, so I'll get to that. Do you mind recapping really quick your step one experience to kind of share where that powerlessness and unmanageability came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to recap the experience for me is if we look at the log and loser list, which is on page 5 in the workbook. And if you need help with this, come to that workshop last Sunday of every month. We also have meetings every single day through the Spiritual Gangsters. I'll post that link. I don't know. Maybe if someone wants to grab the link, if you have it open and send it in, we'll get
it in there. I'll get it.
Perfect. In there. Thank you, Justin. So we have people who go through this, and basically my log list, I checked off willpower didn't work, promises didn't work, all of these things didn't work to keep me from going back. And every single time that it would happen again, I'd go, now I remember, I'm not going to let that happen again. And then fast forward to a week later, I'd be like, wait a minute, I let it happen again. It was even though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't do anything. And who's to say it's wrong? I knew it was uncomfortable. I knew I didn't want it, but I couldn't, on my own willpower, I couldn't change it. I didn't know what to do. So for me, and I had also gone to a mental health institution 3 times because I'd tried to end it all. And I was like, dang, I can't even kill myself out of this. Not to be dark, but that's where I was. And then I was like, okay, well, I have no choice but to be curious about what else to do, because those options didn't work. So for me, that was the powerlessness. And then the loser list, the unmanageability can be seen in the loser list. So I was a director at a nonprofit then I lost all that, for my addiction, compulsive patterns, whatever you want to call it. So for me, the loser list, it felt like the day-to-day of it, I was like, it's fine. I'm good. It was very much the meme of the dog surrounded by fire, drinking coffee. It's fine. But it wasn't. And now I use the loser list to be okay, am I losing time? Am I losing family? Am I losing money? Am I losing things out of whatever I'm pursuing? So that's for me where the unmanageability and the powerlessness, it's check out page 5 of this workbook and see if that helps.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that you put on your loser list that you mentioned initially in this share was sleep. And I think that sleep is, to be punny, the sleeping giant in things that I lose. It's silent. But man, I know in many fellowships, they talk about HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired being one of the things to be aware of in my addiction. Am I tired? If so, what do I need to do to do this? And sleep is huge. What is your take on that? And how do you deal with when you're tired, when you lose sleep today, or making sure that you don't in order to continue on this path?
Oh my God, I love that question. So for me, the thing that made sleep stand out was I used to be kind of a good sleeper. There's a joke in my family, just because from my cultural background, there's always babies sleeping at parties. Noise doesn't bother people who grew up in loud communities like myself. And so for me, when I started losing sleep, I was at first I was it's okay. People don't need sleep. I just started bargaining. And one of the times that I was in a hospital, I was asleep. And the person that I was having this toxic thing with called, and I was so mad that the nurse didn't wake me up. And the nurse told them that I was in therapy. And I was like, that's not true. All mad, And then she sat me down, all nursey, all patient. And she goes, so when people come in here, because I was in the ward for people who were suicidal. And she was saying that like people come in here and often have not slept. There's a correlation there. And we think that you will have more ability to approach what's going on if you've gotten a little more sleep. And I was like, what? And I saw a sleep specialist who like asked me to do an audit of my life. And they were like, oh, it sounds like your relationship is causing you to lose sleep. And I was like, that's a stupid thing to say. That's not just, I hated it, you know? But now I'm like, when I see myself like scrolling on TikTok until 3 a.m., I realize that there's something I'm afraid of, right? Like, because sometimes I still am afraid, like, oh, I'm not compulsively dating every cute person who like asks me to go out with them. That means that I'm spending more time by myself. Am I going to be by myself forever? That's usually what comes up for me when I'm losing sleep is like, oh no, fear of being alone. So what I do is I really do just inventory it. I have like the 4-step template on my phone and I just like write it out, and then I'll message someone, be like, hey, if you're up, or like when you wake up, like, can I share this with you? Cause like I'm in my head, you know? And I usually end up talking to someone else who's like, oh, that's funny. I haven't been sleeping well either. LOL. I guess we need to get into the column 5. I guess we need to get into solution. I guess, you know, if our bodies are divinely made to need sleep, like who are we to like deprive them of that, you know? So that's what helps me, is really doing the inventory and acknowledging it. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully that helps.
No, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And it echoes with me. It echoes really loudly with me. So thank you. All right. Another question came in from Danny. Danny says, what has surprised you most about your higher power?
Hi, Danny. What a good question. Everything. So I guess like I heard someone say, and I think that it might have come up while I was talking, like God is meant to be experienced, not understood. Like that was a really cool thing that I heard. And when I did my step 2, my sponsor's Christian. I think she's here, right? Yeah. Hey. She's Christian. And I was like, well, I'm gay, so you don't want to sponsor me. And she was like, that's not, I mean, I'm good. Like, are you cool with, are you good? And I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. But I thought I was going to have to like pick a religion. Like I thought I was going to have to like choose your Pokemon fighter. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. But the fact that you're allowed to have it be like the great unknown, you're allowed to be like, I don't know what God is. I don't know what any of these people are talking about. My experience might not look like theirs, but I'm willing to like show up and see what happens. Like also a thing that Cameron says in the workshop at the end of the month is he'll say like, when I know that I don't know, then I know that I'm ready to know. And that's very much like the higher power of it all for me. So I think that's the most surprising thing is like, as nerdy as I am, I can't know what God is. So yeah.
I like it. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. From Naika, we have a question from Naika. We're happy to have you here, Naika, also a former guest speaker here. Can you elaborate more on how program supported or supports you in releasing attachment to unhelpful relationships without asking you to outright leave a person? And then at what point in your step recovery process were you able to let go of that relationship, and how does program guard you from engaging with other situations like that?
What a juicy question. Thank you. Well, first of all, everyone tried to tell me to leave. That clearly didn't work. And even to this day, like I noticed that sometimes I'll compulsively, like, you know, when something is comfortable, when it's a chaos that we're familiar with, we'll gravitate towards it. I actually like recently dated someone who's an alcoholic, and I was like, it's okay, I know how to handle this. And then some fellows were like, do you though? Cause you're crazy right now. And I was like, oh shit, you know, like, let me do my steps. And it, you know, that's how I'm rephrasing it. People have been super gentle. People have just been like, the quicker you get to the literal steps of it all, the quicker we get to solution. So it's not just like, yeah, okay, let me answer the question of relationships. It works for everything. Like, even if I'm having like a health problem or something, starting with the essentials. How are my essentials of recovery? How's the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness? And then step 1, am I powerless? Is my life unmanageable? Or is any aspect of it? Step 2, do I think that HP's got my back? Step 3, am I down to like turn my thinking and my actions over to the care of God as I understand God? Like, the best thing that people did for me and that I hope to always do for others is to literally just put it to the steps. And also like what helped me and what I try to pass on is that people were really honest when they didn't know, but they didn't go, I don't know, good luck with that. They went, I don't know, but like the next thing you're supposed to do is an inventory. I'm sorry, I know it's rude, but it helps. Like, do you want to do that and then call me back? And then I'll be like, okay. Like, you know, like I don't have to love the idea, but I'm willing to do it. So that's what helped me. Also, like, don't underestimate the laughter. Like, I was tripping on the previous situation months after the fact, and like talked to a fellow who was like, okay, so you've done your step work, you're waiting on, you know, what's the corrective action? Like, you're in pause land right now, which is something that we say in our fellowship, is like, you're in pause land. And so this fellow was like, do you want to make a playlist for the meeting tonight? And I was like, no. And then later was like, actually, I would love to make a playlist. And that turned into every night I get to, not every night, like every other Friday night we'll do like playlists, and it's a whole thing. So like being committed to the steps and being committed to being happy and joyous and free, and being committed to like putting all of the stuff that's coming up into a 4-step so that we can get, if there is a big thing that needs to be handled by a properly appointed authority, like the steps are the first aid. Some of this stuff is like, you got to get like, now I'm in Debtors Anonymous because I'm rebuilding my financial life. I couldn't do that on day one, but now that's where we are. So, you know, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. And every time something comes up, literally just getting into the steps, and also being like, I'm probably going to have a new experience with the steps. Probably, hopefully, because otherwise I'd get bored. So hopefully.
Yeah, and I love that concept of more will be revealed. I haven't gotten bored yet, and I talked to several people with 50 years of sobriety who practice these things, and that phrase "more will be revealed" is the key to not getting bored and keeping program fresh. Awesome. All right. Have several more questions. We may not be able to get to all of them, but I will be copying them and putting them on our Facebook group. If you want to join in there, you can answer those questions, ask questions there also. But one of these is real quick, Lydz. What is the name of the Step 4 inventory you have on your phone that you use? Is there an app, a special app that you use?
There is an app. I think it's like the 12-step, my spiritual toolkit. Okay. That's not the one that I use though, because I add the column 4 and 5. So I just copy it and paste it and put it in a WhatsApp note and send it to myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Next question. This is from JW. JW says, hello, this is an incredible sharing session, truly life affirming. I do have a question. What strategies keep you going for these moments when the pink cloud of recovery dissipates? And I think we touched on that just a little bit, but keep at it. Let's go there.
Yeah. So that's like one of my favorite moments because I have some options. I can be like, well, I guess the pink cloud's over and everything's fucked and I'm dead. Or because that's how my mind works. I have, I'm an extreme thinker. Or I can be like, all right, I guess I have to inventory this, I guess I gotta. And usually like, I also have been getting a refresher on like the 1 through 3 of it all. Because usually my problem is in step 2. Usually I put limits on the concept of God. I've been like, well, God isn't going to let me make like the best meal for dinner tonight, so I'm not going to eat, or like something like that. And that's like a step 2 problem. So yeah, putting resistance to doing the steps through the steps can give you information. I probably sound like a broken record just saying like on Portlandia, when they say you can pickle that, I'm like, we can inventory that. And I'm really excited because now that I've said it publicly, next time I'm like, I don't want to do an inventory. Y'all can be like, but you just said it works. So this is how it works. It's a social program. So thank you for that question.
Awesome. Let's get to this next question and then we'll start wrapping things up after this one. A question comes from Edwidge. And Edwidge asks, and I hope I pronounced that right. If not, I apologize. How do you deal with imposter syndrome when it comes to happiness? Good question.
That's a beautiful question. Thank you for that question. When I've inventoried my imposter syndrome in the past, it usually comes down to a fear. So for me, it's like, a fear that I'm not good enough, or a fear of, not being helpful, like whatever the fear is. And when I inventory that, then it puts me in a position to be like, okay, the column 5 of it all for me is, I don't know why I'm in a position to do X, Y, and Z, right? I don't know why. Like, if I'm an imposter, then maybe it's about like, oh, I just got acknowledged for doing something cool and I get to speak about it, right? So instead of being an imposter, thinking that, like, that's an old narrative, that's not in line with my higher power. My higher power is putting me there for some goofy reason. So I'm supposed to just show up and just live in column 5. So I get to go, okay, how can I be helpful? And I'll take it to like the 6 and 7 of like, please remove like for me, imposter syndrome leads to like less excitement. And I'll ask for like that to be replaced with zeal, activity and promptness and zeal. Like, help me to have zeal as I talk about this thing, and also understand that I don't know everything. So it's like humility and zeal is what helps me with imposter syndrome. But you can have your own experience, but I'm going to say it again, take it through the steps, see what comes up for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lydz. All right. Before we close out and go into our closing readings, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart to us? Oh.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Couldn't find mute. If you're hearing this for the first time, I know it's crazy, but I'm really excited to see like this. The more unreal it seems, the more ripe you are for a miracle. Please come check out the Spiritual Gangsters meeting, see if it resonates with you. Please check out the workbook, see if it resonates with you. I am so excited for you, no matter where you are on your journey. So thank you for letting me be of service.
Thank you so much, Lydz. And if somebody would like to contact you, are you okay if they email me and I refer them to you so we can get that information to you? Are you open to that?
That is fine. But if I'm being rigorously honest, which is what I do now, the best place to find me is literally in the meetings.
Yeah.
If you come to Spiritual Gangsters, I co-host with a friend Friday nights and sometimes on Saturday, and I pop around at the meetings. So come to the meetings and you'll see me. Like, it's a real thing.
Awesome. And I posted that link to the Spiritual Gangsters meetings here in the chat, and I will also post it in the show notes of the meeting in the podcast. So we're good to go there. Awesome. Let's get to our closing reading here and get moving on with the rest of our day. Thanks again, Lydz. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Lydz, you knocked it out of the park, by the way. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have other questions, please go to RECO12.com and join in our community on the website there, or join our private Facebook group and ask those questions and answer others' questions that will come up there. I invite the audience to come back next week. If you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to help us work our 12th step and share this message with others. Next week, we will be hearing from Michael S., whose topic is relapse prevention. Michael S. was also a previous guest on RECO12 and spoke on emotional sobriety in meeting number 68. So we're getting some repeat customers here, and it's great. Love it. I look forward to hearing from him again next week. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the Native American third step prayer that Lydz will lead us in.
Amazing. So first we'll take a moment for those who are still sick and suffering. Oh, great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things that you have made and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things you have taught my people. Let me learn the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be superior to my siblings, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come to you with clean hands and clear eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit will come to you without shame. Amen, and so it is.
Amen. Thank you, Lydz. Everybody come trudge this happy road with me. Work it. You are worth it.
this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight. Still searching for glimmers of light. Feet still on the ground, I can still be found. Standing still.
I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered. I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and bind it with the sea.